Are you looking to build yourself this incredibly solid custom rebounder, and all for a fraction of what you'd pay online? So in an effort to further upgrade my backyard setup, I started researching these training aids, and after reading some reviews, discovered that the lighter weight ones tend to skid around on you, whereas the more anchored down versions can really chew up your yard. And worst of all, everything that I was finding in a decent size was going to set me back several $100s.
Bruh.
So I set out to create a heavyweight version at a better price point that wouldn't scoot around and would also look good while using it, and might even double as a storage wall for my lawn striper, but more on that later. So for today's video, we'll go over exactly what you'll need to spend for both a basic and deluxe version, and then provide a detailed walkthrough of the entire build. And then once we get the thing built, I'll go ahead and put it to the test and see just how skid-proof we were able to get our end result. So be sure to stick around for that. But before we get to the details, if you enjoy this type of money-saving DIY content, please take a minute to hit that like button and even consider subscribing. But not if you have a money allergy. I know there are probably a few people out there allergic to money who absolutely hate this channel. So if your seasonal money allergies are beginning to flare up and you couldn't bear the idea of saving a few dollars, do not, I repeat, do not hit that subscribe. Alright, so let's get right into it. So as far as materials go, even if you're just putting together a super basic version of this, you're still going to need to buy a couple of these 2-foot by 4-foot sheets of 3/4 inch plywood, along with a 4-pack of locking hinges. Now to recreate the rebounder in this video, you'll also need to get your hands on some oil-based primer and spray paint, along with a handful of screw hooks, a few rolls of painter's tape, and then a handle as well. I should mention too that I'll be sure to link everything down in the description, so once you're done watching, you can go ahead and click through and figure out which option is best for you. Okay, so here I've just identified the least good-looking side of the 2 sheets of plywood, as this piece here is going to get cut down into our support structures. So you'll want to save your best-looking piece for the front, as we're basically taking our 2 sheets of plywood, splitting one in half, cutting the corners off of it, rotating those supports around, and then fastening them to the back of the other sheet with our locking hinges. And the first step, in order to do that, is going to involve drawing a long straight diagonal line across our board and then cutting it in half. And if you're going to be using a jigsaw like me, just be sure to rotate your entire cut line off of whatever you have holding your board. Clamp things down securely, and then make sure to wear all necessary protective equipment. So with that cut finished, go ahead and mark a line 21 inches from the end of each of your newly formed triangles and make those cuts as well. Not a bad idea here to hit everything with a sander just to knock down your edges, as this plywood can be pretty rough. Okay, so once you get all 3 pieces cut out and sanded, it's time to wipe away the dust and get some primer on there. So, as our rebounder here will be spending much of its life outside on the wet grass, I'm rolling on this oil-based cover stain from Zinzer to try and waterproof things as much as possible. And as we speed this up a bit, I'll just mention that you'll want to make sure and get an even application on all the sides, especially the ones that will be resting on the ground. And definitely tackle this one outside, as this stuff is super high VOC. Okay, so while we wait a few hours for this to dry out before flipping them all over and priming the other sides, I'm going to wrap up both my roller and tray into a garbage bag and just twist it shut so it's airtight. This way, nothing gets dried out in between applications and we can use everything again, instead of having to clean and dirty a whole other setup. And as luck would have it, the weather wasn't really cooperating on this particular day, so here I am placing these underneath the overhang on the back of the house as the storm clouds move in behind me. Alright, so fast forward a few hours and it's time to flip these over, unwrap our roller and pan, and then get some primer on the backsides. Same exact process as before, and here's a few decent shots of our finish as it dries. Now at this point I let things set up overnight and then was back out here the next day to apply our finish coat, but first wanted to sand down the front side with this here orbital. And after a quick sanding and wipe down, it was time to add in our design into the top left corner there, for which I'm using some masking tape and an angle finder. Now the angle finder might be a bit overkill here, as you can very well just eyeball what looks like 45 degrees and then put your tape on there. I decided to alternate between the 1-inch and 2-inch strips, and doing any design like this is totally optional, so if you want to save a few bucks, you don't have to do it. But let's be honest.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
So with our stripes on there, it's time to wrap our edges and then go ahead and spray everything. I'm using this Rust-Oleum chalked product in a matte finish, as this was already in my garage. And also, I'm thinking a matte finish might better hide a few of the smudges, as this thing will inevitably be getting covered in dirty soccer ball imprints, but we'll see. So I'm just trying to spray back and forth over the entire width of the board at the same angle as my stripes there, making several passes and also making sure to overlap a small portion of each previous pass of coverage as I go. Definitely better to apply a few lighter coats than trying to do too much at once. And as we peel off our tape, one recommendation I'll make here is that you should try and stand your board up on its side while spray painting instead of laying it flat like you see me doing here. I actually ended up ruining my finish with all these drips from the spray nozzle, and then, in order to fix that, had to spot sand everything and then apply another coat with the board up on its side. Well, anyway, you'll want to let that dry overnight, but as I'm doing this project on dad hours, here I am a full 5 days later and ready to put on our finishing touches. So before we drill anything, you'll want to offset both of the supports, exactly 3 inches from the sides before marking your line. From there, you can just stand each support up into its extended position. And while keeping it exactly on line, position your hinges and then mark in each of your screw holes. Once everything is marked, you can lay the supports flat and pre-drill each of the holes for your hardware, being super careful not to punch through the front of the rebounder. You can see here that I've taped off my bit to be just shorter than the length of our hardware, which is just barely under the 3/4 inch thickness of our plywood, and even then, I'm probably only drilling about 2/3 of the depth. I actually almost swapped out the hardware with something shorter, but decided to just drill a test piece using the scrap from earlier. And somehow, the plywood was just thick enough for the included screws, which may officially make this the first DIY project in human history that didn't require an unscheduled trip to the Home Depot. Okay, so with everything pre-drilled, go ahead and screw on your supports. I ended up going with 3 screws per each side of each hinge to really lock things down. Alright, so after being pleasantly surprised by the action on those hinges, it was time to move on to the more innovative part of the build, which is of course our attempt to skid-proof this thing by attaching our lawn striper.
Yeah, boy.
But first, let's fasten on this heavy-duty door pull. Now, no matter which type of handle you decide to put on there, again, just make sure that the fasteners are no longer than 3/4 inch, as you don't want anything to poke through. This one here actually came with some 1-inch hardware that I switched out with 1/2-inch screws just to be safe. But to save you some time, I'll go ahead and link a smaller handle in the description as well. Okay, so this lawn striper probably weighs somewhere in the vicinity of 15 to 20 pounds. And with the help of 4 of these screw hooks, we're going to add in some attachment points for both the right side up and upside down orientations. So basically just eyeball wherever the striper sits flush with the ground, and then after pre-drilling and getting these started by hand, you can grab like a screwdriver or drill bit to use as leverage in order to tighten them the rest of the way. And if for some reason you don't have a lawn striper lying around, you can always skip this step and just throw a sandbag behind there. And while this did end up being a very tidy fit, the real question still remained unanswered. Would adding this in actually prevent the thing from skidding? Or did I just blow an extra $4 to create the world's nicest miniature storage wall for my lawn striper? Well, either way, it was time to find out. Now, as most lawns tend to be somewhat pitched away from the house, I decided to test it out both on a bit of a downslope, as well as when it's positioned more or less on the flat. And with it up here in the level area, while there is a bit of movement, especially on the off-center hits, you can see that after I've attached the lawn striper on there, there's definitely both a visible and audible difference. And for what it's worth, I did get pretty similar results with it in the upside-down pop-up orientation. I've sort of found that this thing is solid enough that you've basically got to be hitting it way harder than necessary if you really want to scoot this thing around. Here I'm hitting some pretty big pop-ups almost across the yard, with it on a downslope nonetheless, and you can see it's still absolutely holding its ground. So it begs the question, do you really need the additional weight back there? And honestly, while it does slightly improve the performance, given the sheer build quality of this 30-pound rebounder, you're pretty much going to get a decent enough result, with or without it. So yeah, at the end of the day, I was pretty happy with the way this one turned out. Thanks for making it to the end. And if you're interested in DIYing those PVC goals, go ahead and check out this video as well. I'll be sure to link all the build materials in the description, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks.